Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to DN. Today we're going to talk about why the 4-day week makes sense. And for many of us, we've just celebrated the Easter weekend, and I'm sure we're all realizing how much better life is when we're not constantly working and not constantly worrying about work, enjoying that time off that we've had recently. So today we're talking about making the case for why the 4-day week makes sense for us as a society. So the first point is productivity versus time. So the old myth, the old belief is that the longer that somebody is at work, the more productive that they are going to be. That there's this identical parallel relationship between the two. You work longer hours, you are more productive. This made sense maybe in Victorian times, and then when people worked in factories by and large, whereby their output was measured directly with how much they produce. But given we've now moved to a largely service-based economy, this is not always the case that we can measure directly output with time. So we need to dispel that myth that simply working for longer hours means that someone is more productive. And actually there's a growing amount of evidence to say that this is not the case. I'm sure we've all had scenarios where you've possibly been at work and clock watching, not much to do, but you have to be there. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you're being more productive, but you're essentially acquiescing to the power structure by staying at work, because of the illusion that time equals productivity. The second point we're going to explore today is the change in expectations. So we saw this a lot around the COVID times when we were kind of forced into the working from home scenario. And this showed us that people can be productive by working from home. They don't necessarily need to be in an office space. And this gave the workers a slight sense of freedom, a slight sense of the regaining of control in their lives, a bit more time to spend with family, friends, to run errands, some less time commuting, just a little bit more freedom back to the worker. But as well as this, we're seeing changing expectations in terms generally of people valuing their time, people wanting a life outside of work. I guess this has always been the case, but if we look today with the fact that wages haven't really risen with productivity, people are starting to question, well, why am I working so much? I do actually want a bit more free time to spend with friends, family, leisure activities, or to be honest, however they see fit. But we are seeing a change in expectations. As I said, kind of started around COVID, but people are expecting more time, more flexibility, hybrid working, and things like this in their working lives. And we're seeing it increasingly across different industries being implemented. And the third point that we're going to explore is the technology versus productivity scenario. So we mentioned earlier that productivity does not always equal exactly to time spent at work. We need to consider technology at the moment is increasing exponentially with the technology of AI, and that is only going to increase our productivity. So we can now create more across the economy in all different sectors and industries with less input, and increasingly that will be with less human input. So we need to question at this point, well, do we need to work as much as we were in the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, when we didn't have AI back then? And now we do, and that can do a lot of the work. So really we need to evaluate, why are we working so much, and for who are we working so much if we increasingly are not seeing the benefits of that work. We're not seeing increasingly the fruits of our labour, despite the fact that we're working long hours, and despite the fact that technology has absolutely boomed in the last few years and is set to increase massively as we move forward. And the next point kind of follows on from this. It's in terms of the economy and the model, right? So talking about technology, it's improving so much, and the current economic system wasn't designed with this in mind. The current idea of the economy was not designed under the assumption that AI and robotics can actually complete most of the tasks, most of the jobs within the economy. So at that point, we need to start asking questions about what is our role within the economy, and what do we do if we don't need to, or we are not required to work quite as much. Now, I think that the 4-day working week with no loss of pay is a good step in terms of transition. Eventually, to be honest, if we look at AI and where it's going, we're probably going to need more than that as a society, but it's a definite step in the right direction. Now, this is not a particularly new idea, to be honest. I first heard of this around 2016. Andrew Yang, I believe, in America, ran for president, a very fringe candidate in 2016. And his kind of whole platform was about the 4-day week. And then as well about UBI. But we really need to think about these things, guys, for the economy that is to come. We need to rethink work and rethink how it fits into our lives. So guys, let me know what you think about the 4-day working week. Do you agree with it? Do you see the merits? Do you disagree? Do you think it's impossible? Let me know below, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.